Why is it that when the word homeless comes up, the image of a middle-aged man in a baggy coat appears? In September of 2013, I started working with students at Churches United for the Homeless. The revelation that the term homeless applied to a larger population than middle-aged men confronted me immediately upon arriving there. People will ask, what's it like working with homeless kids? Well, it's like working with kids. The pressures put on these kids are considerably more than the average child, but they are still, at their core, children. That is why they need the same resources and experiences as other students. After meeting these students and beginning to see and understand their dreams and goals, I wanted to know if there were any policies that were in place to help them get there. As I began to research, the earliest document I could find was a newspaper article published in 1891. The article was titled "Waifs Barred from the Schools," published in the Minneapolis Tribune on November 19, 1891, and it reveals some of the issues that occur when dealing with students who are homeless. In this article, 2 young girls were taken from their previous residences and became wards of the state. They were now living in the House for the Friendless, and were said to be of exemplary character and conduct, with both attending school regularly. After moving, they were barred from public schools because they no longer had guardians living in the public school district. At this time, there were no laws in place preventing school boards from turning students away who could not prove they belonged in that district. Other than this article, the education of homeless students received very little spotlight in the late 19th and early 20th century. While researching homelessness in the school-age population, the lack of information was astounding. Where did these children go, and why haven't we done something about this before? In an article written in 1992, the issue of homelessness is discussed as it stood in the years 1890 to 1925. The economy has a huge impact on the availability of affordable housing, and there was an economic crash in 1873. During the 1880s, the economy began to look up, but the 90s brought more bad news. More than 16,000 businesses collapsed, causing unemployment. Quote, "Homelessness is merely one phase in a cycle of extreme poverty," end quote. Despite misconceptions, including mine, the homeless population was younger than in the past, and there's very little data on homeless women and families. These homeless families aren't mentioned in literature from the early 20th century. Families that were homeless were seen as more costly and harder to help back onto their feet. The invisibility of homeless families and children needs to fade away. This pervasive issue, though still a problem, has been addressed by members of our government throughout history. Starting in 1909, when Theodore Roosevelt was elected president, various policies were implemented that affected many of the children that had previously been forgotten. He established the U.S. Children's Bureau in 1912, and the well-being of America's children began to improve steadily thanks to many of his programs, like Frontier Nurses, who visit rural mothers and children. Quote, "Each child represents either a potential addition to the productive capacity and enlightened citizenship of a nation, or, if allowed to suffer from neglect, a potential addition to the destructive forces of a community. The interests of the nation are involved in the welfare of this army of children, no less than in our great material affairs." End quote. President Theodore Roosevelt, 1909. Franklin D. Roosevelt ended child labor in 1938 by signing the Fair Labor Standards Act. He also instituted the first food stamp program and Social Security. Harry S. Truman instituted the National School Lunch Program Act in 1946. Lyndon B. Johnson created Project Head Start, which was part of his war on poverty. He also helped implement Medicaid to provide health care to children in 1965. Richard Nixon signed the Women, Infants, and Children, the WIC program, in 1972. William Clinton created the State Children's Health Insurance Program to give medical coverage to students falling between the cracks of Medicaid and insured parents in 1997. One of the most important educational policies that affect children who are homeless is the McKinney-Vento Act, passed in 1987.
Well, probably the law that helps the largest number of homeless kids in the country is the McKinney-Vento Act. However, the bill is minimally funded, so there's lots of kids who aren't being identified, getting free and appropriate education, and getting transportation. So that's a real problem.
This act helped define what homelessness actually was, and it gave students the option to choose what school they'd like to go to. It provided free transportation for them to and from school, and ensured state and local support to make sure these rights were implemented. Under this law, school districts are responsible for identifying homeless youth in their community, and each district needs to have a liaison. The duties of the liaison are to identify the homeless children and help them receive the services that they are eligible for.
However, they only have one person who's in charge of this, Linda. She doesn't have any secretary, she doesn't have an aide, she doesn't have anybody else. And what did she tell us? Most years they identify 150 kids in the Moorhead School District who are homeless as per the definition of the McKinney-Vento Act, and there's about 5,000 kids in the Moorhead School District.
In 2009, slightly over 1 million children were estimated to be enrolled in the public school system and identified as homeless. According to a collection of data from the National Center for Homeless Education, the amount of children enrolled in public school who identified as homeless in 2011 was 1,168,354. That is more than the state of North Dakota by far. Quote, "If all of them were gathered in one city, they would represent a larger population than that of Atlanta, Denver, or St. Louis. Because they are scattered in 1,000 cities, they are easily unseen." End quote, Jonathan Kozel. Circumstances remain challenging for many children who are homeless. Families find themselves homeless for so many reasons, including natural disasters, lack of affordable housing, lack of good-paying jobs, health crises, no support networks, or drug abuse problems. The stressors on children who are homeless have a severe impact on their development and ability to succeed in school. When parents are worried about basic survival, school can easily get pushed to the back burner. Quote, "Our fears are confirmed. Each school day, thousands of young people are losing their best opportunity for a better life. Education." End quote. Education Secretary Laura F. Cavazos. One of the most pervasive problems is attendance. An article written by the National Association of Education of Homeless Children sheds light on the severe problem of homelessness in school-aged children. Quote, "My kids are bouncing from school to school," Donna says glumly. "They're meeting new kids all the time, having to deal with different people. It's a lot of emotional stuff for a kid to handle." End quote. Parents often fear that their kids will have to repeat grades because of frequent moves. Ellen Gallagher, a social worker at the Boston shelter, says, "It's hard for mothers to know what to do. Start them in school now or wait a month and start a new one. The mothers always want to think they'll be here for 3 to 4 weeks. Things don't usually happen that fast. Usually it's 3 to 4 months." Other issues include decreased test scores, high dropout rates, and violent behavior. These policies alleviated some of the burden from the parents of homeless kids, but the fastest growing segment of the homeless population is single mothers with children. Quote, "Without these funds, it would be impossible to serve the identified homeless students, since we are also facing severe budget cuts and shortages in our district. These funds have helped us keep our focus on continually trying to identify the students who would often rather remain hidden. We have had several students graduate from high school and go on to higher education, and that would not have happened if we did not have McKinney funds to help them stay in school and get the extra support they need to be successful. We are building productive citizens with our McKinney funds, rather than shoving problems under the rug." South Carolina, Sumter School District 17. So where do we go from here?
We have to provide what kids who are homeless and their families need today through charity, for example, because they need charity. If somebody doesn't give them shoes or a coat, then they're in trouble. But at the same time, the only solution fact that there are children who are homeless is affordable housing. We need to be working to change policies, and because one, there aren't enough people who either are interested or willing to do the policy helping charity kind of work, and the fact that it's not a priority to the local, state, or federal government to generate money, it makes it really difficult. On the shorter term, we need more money. That's a solution. Somebody said, it's okay to tell kids to pull themselves up by their boots, but they got to have boots first.
Quote, "School is a refuge for homeless children and youth, providing safety, structure, and services. Education is also the surest path to economic security and stable housing in adulthood." End quote. School provides a backbone of consistency in a very tumultuous life. No matter what, a child has the right to be in a classroom. The expansion of the McKinney-Vento Act is absolutely necessary, as well as federal funding for these programs. Compensatory education in the public schools needs to continue to receive funds, and instead of pulling students out of class, there needs to be more opportunities before and after school for students who need extra help. Another important obstacle to address is how to make sure that students who are homeless have the ability to engage in extracurricular activities. Under the McKinney-Vento Act, extracurricular activities are a child's right. Every coach, teacher, and counselor who encounters and interacts with homeless children should know that these students have a right to fully participate in their school communities. In order to help students break from the cycle of socialization, our educational system has to give these students a chance to develop their potential and pursue their dreams. They did not choose into what circumstances they were born. If the purpose of our educational system is to develop our students to their fullest potential and to see each of them gain the motivation and self-efficacy to stride forward, then changes need to take place.
I think another really important role that school can play in the lives of kids who are homeless is to realize that these kids, even though they are struggling with the hardships and the challenges of being homeless, they still have all kinds of interests, gifts, and talents. They have all kinds of geniuses that if schools weren't so hog-tied with testing and accountability, they could have the kind of curriculum that would be very welcoming. Unless we believe that homeless kids come out of their mother's wombs damaged, the reason that kids who are homeless struggle is because of the failure of systems to support them.
Quote, "To prepare him for the future life means to give him command of himself. It means so to train him that he will have the full and ready use of all his capacities, that his eye and ear and hand may be tools ready to command, that his judgment may be capable of grasping the conditions under which it has to work, and the executive forces be trained to act economically and efficiently." John Dewey.